Hey everyone, we have here the wonderful Jessie Shedden. Once again, I'm going to do a little supplement to our podcast that's coming out this Thursday because I think this is so incredibly topical. And what a blessing that I happen to have this expert on the subject of kind of cult deprogramming. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to basically what I want to talk about is QAnon. It is the big elephant in the room right now. A lot of people are dealing with this, with friends, with family, with people on the internet. Some of you know a lot about it. Some of you know nothing about it. So I'm going to start with the assumption that you have no idea what QAnon is. And I'm just going to read a little bit from the Wikipedia page here so that we're all on the same page, literally. So QAnon is a disproven and discredited far-right conspiracy theory alleging that a secret cabal of Satan-worshipping, cannibalistic pedophiles, yep, you heard right, is running a global child sex trafficking ring and plotting against former U.S. President Donald Trump, who has been fighting the cabal. U.S. prosecutors have called QAnon a group commonly referred to as a cult. There are, this is just me adding, there are, of course, religious overtones to this as well. It's, as it's a Satan, satanic worshiping group, there are, of course, angels and people on the light side, the good side that are fighting this, that have put Donald Trump in this place in the conspiracy theory. So you see, it's like a whole cosmic worldview. And so some people, it's not just the far right that has kind of glommed onto this. It's light workers and it's people who really believe that they are fighting for good. They are doing the right thing. And so I just want people to understand this. It's not just like, crazy wingnut out there, people who are buying into this. It's like your next door neighbor, Karen. Okay. So QAnon asserts that Trump is planning a day of reckoning known as the Storm, when thousands of members of the cabal will be arrested. QAnon supporters have accused many liberal Hollywood actors, Democratic politicians, and high-ranking government officials of being members of the cabal. They have also claimed that Trump feigned conspiracy with Russians to enlist Robert Mueller to join him in exposing the sex trafficking ring and preventing a coup d'etat by Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and George Soros. The QAnon conspiracy theories have been amplified by Russian state-backed troll accounts on social media, as well as Russian state-backed traditional media. So that kind of gives us a starting point here, right? What I find most interesting about this is that because it's so high level, this is like Illuminati type stuff. It's so easy to say, well, of course we have no evidence because they've covered up everything. And so you can present just about anything. You can cherry pick kind of just about anything as evidence that this conspiracy is real. And that's when things get really dangerous. So my first question to you is, just hearing that, what is your take on this? Is this a cult?
That's a really interesting one, because what's going through my head as I'm listening to you is the similarities I see between the cult I came from and QAnon is that the basic premise is something that's actually got good at heart. So for mine, it was Christianity. In this one, I see the paedophilia and the wanting to do right. But I see massive extremism around the good at heart, and then a lot of very innocent people being hurt through that. Those being perpetrated and those doing the perpetrating. And it's just, that's just what's come to me. And I think I've completely forgotten what your question was. I just had that on my head and I needed to deliver it.
No, that answers my question. Absolutely. So the other thing that I think is really dangerous about this is that there's this militarism behind it. There's this violence behind it, where we're saying not just, there's these Satan worshiping, cannibals that we need to save children from, but we need to hurt them. We need to kill them. We need to attack them to save these children. Whenever you get into that kind of rhetoric, where you're saying, there needs to be this kind of day of reckoning, this apocalyptic event, for, to purify, or it's like that's when things get really scary and dangerous. And this particular danger is that because, there was this attack on the Capitol by largely people who believe this conspiracy theory, the bloodshed has already started, right? This has become real. They've made the bloodshed real. Now, when you look at the kind of, like you said, the basic premise of this, it's like people who are good at heart, who want to do the right thing. And so it really saddens and sickens me to see these people. And I know people who believe this. I know people who believe this personally. And they're good people. And so it really saddens and sickens me to see these people used as puppets and used as kind of patsies and scapegoats for these people who have, their own, of course, political agendas. So, like you said, people are getting hurt.
Yeah. And what I see that's interesting in what came up for me and what you were saying then is you get crusaders it's their modus operandi. And this goes into something I was going to cover a bit later on, but they have a burning desire to do something for good. They feel that they have a passion and it's their calling in life, and they find something that relates to that for them, and they put absolutely everything into it. Yes. And it becomes very much one end or the other of the pendulum. There's no balance in it. And I've seen that in the cult I was in. In fact, interestingly enough, I think, as we said before, they feel like they're doing something good, but I've actually seen one who was within it and absolutely full out doing everything he could to promote it. And as soon as something went wrong, he hopped entirely across to the other side, and now he's doing absolutely everything he can to bring it down. And I've had to stand back and say, you know what, this person has a characteristic of the crusader. That's how he lives his life, is in full overdrive, pursuing something to the extreme, because that feels fulfilling for him.
Yes.
And so it doesn't really matter what the cause is or who it is. It's just the base need to fulfill that. I would be fascinated as an outsider, particularly if I was close to these people, and I'm not close to the one I'm talking about, so I haven't done it, but to stand back and say, why? Why does this person have this need? What is this need coming from? What is unfulfilled in them that they're putting it into something like this?
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And so many of these people just have felt like their lives have lost meaning and purpose. And so they've been seeking purpose, and this gave them that sense of purpose and community. And that's what has been driving it. Yes. And so we have to look at that and say, how can we create something positive for these people to put this wonderful energy towards?
Yes. And I think also, it's looking at how we can find something that taps into the base premise of what they were trying to do. So if it is around, say, paedophilia, what is it on sex trafficking? What is it that they can do in a good way around that to help?
To actually save the children, yes.
Yes.
Now, when you look at, so of course, we just had the inauguration. That was really devastating for a lot of these QAnon folks, because they kept waiting for the storm and kept, getting these prophecies or these, predictions of like, it's going to happen on this date, didn't happen. It's going to happen on this date, didn't happen. And so now that Donald Trump is no longer president, they've kind of either, a lot of them are jumping ship and saying, well, it didn't happen. What now? I put my whole life into this. I lost my family. I lost my friends. I lost my job, to this cause. Now what? But then you have the other side where they're really digging in deeper and just finding ways to make it work still, and saying you have to have faith. You can't lose faith. This is all just a test to test our faith. And the truth is, it goes so deep that even that we now have a shadow government that was actually, who you thought was Joe Biden getting sworn in. That was actually Donald Trump in a state-of-the-art Joe Biden mask. That's why Donald Trump couldn't be there at the inauguration. This is how far people will go to make sense of something that doesn't make sense anymore. So my deepest question to you, I think, is how can we help these people? How can we help them?
It's so fascinating to hear you go over all of that, because I knew none of that about the inauguration. I'd briefly looked up the organisation before we came on, but there's so many parallels. There are so many parallels, and I can totally see why people are referring to it as a cult for that reason. I think for those who have become, as it were, disenchanted with the whole thing, and I think anyway, the one thing I would want to do is to give them a way to save face.
Right. Give them
So
grace.
absolutely. So there's a phrase that I remember over and over again, which is, no one runs into the arms of a prison warder.
Right.
So if you're going to come at them with judgment and expectations and conditions, you're not giving them a space in which to reconsider their position and gently step down from it if that's what they decide they want to do.
Absolutely.
I think in terms of those that are holding to it, that's a harder one to, I wouldn't say crack, to handle, because yes, I can see it in where I came from, and the only reason I'm laughing is because I can see it there, not because I'm discrediting anybody that's currently in the situation. Because yes, it was like, this is a test, and it is that there's more and more mythical layers added to keep the person in the place that they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
For myself, I can only give you my experiences. I can't tell you what somebody should do, but in the 2 years after I escaped, I didn't want to look at any of it, so I didn't touch it at all, didn't look at anything through a new lens. I just kind of denied to myself it even happened. That was my only way. It was just like a cold break, and I carried on with another life. But I didn't hate or speak badly about my past life. I just didn't even acknowledge it. And it took till the 3rd year where I felt in a safe space where I was not going to receive judgment, and I was going to receive unconditional love, that I could stand back and start to make contact with people who had taken the journey I had taken already. So I think you get kind of, I was going to say, the early adopters and the slow adopters. The early adopters who decide, this is it, I'm done with it, and I'm happy to go and talk to other people about it and try and make sense of the whole thing. And then you've got those who just need to take it their own journey. There's no standard procedure for deprogramming from a cult at all. Everybody arrives at different things in their own way. Many of them are very traumatized by things that they've come into contact with during that time.
Yes.
And there's a lot of guilt and shame around it. These, as we said before, a lot of them come from wanting to do something good. When they stand back and realize that good caused harm, there's a lot of shame and guilt about that, because they were inherently a good person in the first place, but they've been sidetracked. And I think, just for myself, in the 3rd year, I was finally ready to start to reach out to people who had taken that journey, because I missed them.
Yeah.
I missed that sense of community, that sense of belonging. And I needed to be able to talk to people who had been through the journey I'd been through to make sense of it.
Absolutely.
But I tiptoed in. So I would start tiptoeing, and then they would say something that would trigger me, and I would reverse out at top speed, and then I would come back and have another go. And it's been really gradual, and it's taken the best part of a year for me to start to see things. And now I can kind of laugh at some of the things that we did that in the past I would have probably justified.
Yeah.
And I'm still not there. There are still higher level things that I don't see any problem with. I would not do them, and I would not suggest anybody else did them, but I haven't judged them, and I'm not ready to look at that yet.
And I don't know that it's your job to judge it. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
I think at a certain level, it's not even really helpful to judge or condemn it. It's helpful to say, this isn't working for me, and I don't want to be a part of it because it's not in line with my values.
Yeah, I see it's, particularly see it in the case in which you're talking about, but again, in mine, I think it's more important for me to have arrived at what's right for me in terms of it's no longer right for me, and then to do what I can to perpetrate the opposite, if you know what I mean. So
Absolutely.
lack of judgment towards people, which cults tend to encourage a lot of judgment, a lot of heaviness and heavy emotions.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, I'm gonna be the opposite of that now. Or what can I do to undo what's happened? But I don't need to spend time muckraking through it
Yeah.
and feeling the pain of it. It's okay. What can I do that I wouldn't say makes up for, but kind of achieves what I wanted to achieve out of my pure motives in the first place?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's the key is finding something positive to go toward
Yes.
instead of constantly fighting against this negative. Because the thing is, what you resist persists. And so, whether you're fighting against, shame or you're fighting against a satanic cabal, when you put energy against something, it strengthens it. It strengthens
Yes.
it.
I love that. And it's such a timely reminder for me as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. I want to keep this brief because, of course, we have a whole wonderful show to listen to with you. But I just wanted to set this up so that people can understand that this is still happening and this is happening all around you. And whether you're aware of it or not, there are a lot of people right now who are looking for something to believe in. And this was offered to them as something, a way to do real good in the world, to save children. And are there children being sex trafficked right now? You bet there are. Are there horrible, awful, cannibalistic rituals probably happening somewhere in the world? Yeah, there probably are. Does that mean that there's a shadow government and that there's, a spiritual war being waged? Probably not. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not the expert in the world, but the bottom line is when somebody tells you you need to hurt people to do good, that is when you should always go, wait a minute. That doesn't sound right to me.
Absolutely.
That's
And
my
yeah,
personal values.
yeah,
I was raised Quaker,
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. And I think so much, I see a lot of emotion and energy being used in a negative way rather than actually constructively. If you look at some of these people that are working in sex trafficking, they're not the raging people that go around wanting to lop people's heads off. They
yeah,
know that's not how you make a real difference in that world.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this. Is there anything else you'd like to say on this before we wrap up?
No, my own, well, yes. my, the one underlying thing I would say is if you're dealing with someone that's considering their position on it,
Mhm.
unconditional love and acceptance. That does not mean you have to agree with what they think and that you have to change your values to align with that. But unconditional love and acceptance was the safe space that gave me the ability to stand back and look at stuff and go, well, this doesn't make sense.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey everyone, welcome to the That's Allowed podcast. This is your hostess, Audrey and McKeon, and I'm here with Jessie Shedden. Hey Jessie, how you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in. What story is the world not getting?
Well, I guess from my perspective, it would be one of what it's like to escape a cult.
Hmm. And what is that like?
And I think I should follow that up with and what the ramifications are.
Absolutely.
Because
So where does this story start for you?
in terms of escaping the cult, that was just 3 years ago.
Wow.
But to go further back than that, I was born into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of all I've ever known.
Yeah.
And the story doesn't, I was going to say it doesn't end when you leave. It almost
Right.
begins when you leave, really.
Absolutely. But tell us a little bit about what it was like to live in a cult and to be raised in a cult.
Interestingly, I think some of that I'm still discovering. Because when you've grown up so conditioned, you really don't see it any other way.
Right.
Obviously, some of the basics are really clear. So for my situation, I was unable to wear jeans or trousers. We were unable to socialize or eat with people outside of it, certainly not have relationships outside of it. There were a definitive number of things that women could do in life. So owning or running a business was out of the question.
Right.
Homemaking was very much in, and that was predominantly your role. Certainly you wouldn't have a business if you were in a relationship and your husband was at home looking after the children. That was just not a possibility.
Right.
So very, very staid social typicals.
Yeah.
And no visiting pubs, clubs, nightclubs, restaurants, bars, no smoking, no drugs, not such a bad thing. Very ultra conservative, certainly no questioning on the part of women as well.
Right.
No university, no college.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of no's.
Yes.
But
What I'm
then you
hearing.
also, yeah, but then you also get a lot of protection and support that you realize isn't there when you leave.
Yes.
So it wouldn't have been uncommon for me to walk into another cult member's house and know that I could put my car keys down, my wallet, everything, driving license, the lot, and never have to worry about it, because you're a
Yes.
very tight-knit community. If you're going to do something, you're a bit of an idiot, because everyone's going to know very
Right.
quickly.
Yeah. There is certainly a sense of safety there.
Yes, to a degree. So yes, you didn't expect violence or physical harm, but the backstabbing, the criticizing, that was all there in plentiful
Yeah.
quantities.
So that brings me to the next question, which is what made you realize that you needed to make a change?
There's kind of two ways to that, parts to that, I suppose. One is the gradual. It's like from the age of 8, I was on the raw end of bullying, and I just knew that I didn't really fit. Nothing really felt right. Particularly when I came to looking at relationships, I was like, I knew that the older I got, the less I felt like I belonged, because the less I could pursue who I was in myself, and the options just weren't there for what I wanted. So my sticking points came in. I didn't really like any of the options that were available in terms of relationships. I didn't actually feel it was my calling to have children, and I knew I wouldn't have an option on that. And I wanted to stay very much as a businesswoman, and I wouldn't have an option on that either.
Yeah.
So if you take away all of those, that you're not going to end up in a relationship with anybody, so you're going to stay in your family home. You're not allowed to own a business, so you're still going to have to work for somebody no matter what age you are, and that you were expected to have children if you did get into a relationship. Things were looking pretty bleak.
Yeah. So you decided?
Yeah, so the main catalyst, I suppose, came when very suddenly my mother was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 66.
Okay.
And we never planned for that. I mean, you don't, but more
Who
specifically,
plans for that?
I know, crazy for me to say that, but more specifically, she was 8 years younger than my father, so we'd always planned for him passing on first.
Right.
We'd set her up financially, we made sure the house was all ready for that. And if I can say it kindly, he was the one who enjoyed being ill. She never did. She never complained about her health. She worked really hard to have good health.
Yeah.
So it was totally unexpected. It was like, this wasn't supposed to happen this way.
Yeah.
And I think because we had planned for the opposite, it was like, who are you fooling, Jessie? You don't know how much longer you've got.
Yeah.
And you're not happy now. You can't wait till some undefined time in the future to change that.
Yeah. So what did you do?
I was, to go a stage back again, I had found myself being sexually abused at the age of 16, partly as a product of no sex education, no education around relationships at all. So total I mean, I guess there's a lot of lack of understanding around the difference between lust and love, but specifically more because there just was such a lack of teaching in that area.
Yeah.
And that was actually by somebody outside the cult, not within it. And then at the time, that wasn't seen as that. It was seen that it was my fault. So I ended up being kind of dragged over the coals by priests who were a very similar age to the person who had done this, who wanted to know all the minor details, which was a pretty traumatic experience.
Yeah.
As I was healing from that, or attempting to, in my own kind of shut-in way, because there was no one really to talk to in the perspective that it wasn't actually my fault, I met someone outside the cult who believed in me, which was kind of, it felt like one of the first people to actually do that.
Yeah.
And at the time, I thought I loved him because he believed in me.
Sure.
And we went on to have kind of a very much contraband dating situation for about 4 years, but I'm talking about 20 minutes snatched here and there.
Yeah.
So that was when I was 18, and then it was discovered. I was again kind of in the doghouse for having like a second relationship in their eyes. And I went from being already under house watch to being even more intensive house watch. So I wasn't able, from 18 onwards, I was not able to go out shopping on my own. I didn't go anywhere on my own. Things were often done for me. I wasn't trusted. I was accountable for every minute of my time. My bedroom, anything, any of my devices, not that I had many, were open to being scrutinized, and there was just no safe place to be myself at all. And then once that was discovered after 4 years, I was made under duress to write him a letter and tell him that I didn't love him anymore. And contact ceased. I was issued to burn things that he'd given me. All contact details I had to get rid of. And so we went for about 8-9 years, and we had nothing to do with each other. He realized it would make it very difficult for me if he dared to make contact again, so he didn't want to bring more pain on me, and kept out of the way. And then things just got harder and harder for our family. They were under a lot of pressure, a lot of discrimination, bullying. I saw my father being just ripped to shreds by hypocrisies and wrongdoings within the cult itself. And when you're very close to your parents, it's soul destroying to see that. And because you're a woman, you're supposed to shut up and not say anything. You can't do much, and if you do, you bring more problems on them. And the unrest in me, it got to a point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I reached out to the guy I'd been in contact with previously, just very tentatively, because I felt I couldn't go to my deathbed him thinking that I didn't love him, because it wasn't true. I wanted to put that right. And it just, as soon as we saw each other, connection was like that. It was like there'd never been any time apart. However, he was in a relationship, a coexisting relationship, not necessarily a blossoming one, but still in one. And I was then in this, I'm now treading on somebody else's relationship, but he was my hope. I'm in such a dark place. I don't want to let go of that hope. He didn't want to let go of me because he remembered what it was like back then. And it was a very difficult position to be in. On top, add to that, your mother then getting diagnosed with cancer as well. So it was all kind of layering up at the same time. And I reached out to a counsellor, and I was like, it took me 3 attempts to find a counsellor that actually was a counsellor, is what I'd say. The first one just tried to fleece me, and had no qualifications and was nothing more than a sleazy salesperson. The second one actually was degrading and did not have the empathy there at all. And third one, finally, I was like, is this meant to happen? How many tries? And with his help, I was able to see that I could actually leave. I could find hope outside of the guy that I was leaning on at that point in time, and find the strength to be able to plan a way out. Because even thinking about leaving you're doing the unthinkable. Prior to me leaving, in the particular church I was in, the last person before that was 23 years prior. So it doesn't happen often.
Yeah. So a couple of things that come up for me. First of all, I always find it so ironic when I see religious control like that, because God is very clear on this point in any religious text you ever read that humans have free will for a reason. They have to choose for themselves. It doesn't count if somebody does it for you. And so this obsession with controlling the behavior of other people is completely contrary to any teaching, any religious teaching in any tradition. So that's one.
I have two answers to that, but keep going.
Yes. And the other thing is, I just want to really congratulate you because it's what you did was incredibly difficult, incredibly brave. And the fact that you sought out counseling, knowing that you were going to need that kind of inner help, not just external help, was so wise of you to realize that and to not give up after it didn't work over and over, to try to find that right fit, to find someone to help you. That kind of deliberateness is really rare. And so I just really want you to take a moment to like pat yourself on the back for that, because that is a big deal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think looking back, because so much has happened since,
Yeah.
because the transition isn't smooth,
Oh no.
I think some of the intensity of that time has been buried under other layers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally hear you on the previous point you made, because I think one of the things as I came more and more towards leaving, I would read a lot about dictatorships and communist countries. So the North Korea I was reading quite a lot about.
Mm-hmm.
And I also looked at other cults, I suppose. So I was looking at the Amish and the Mennonites, and one of the things I liked about the Amish was that they actually have Rumspringa, where you can go and test it out and see what you want for yourself.
That's right.
And I was thinking, do you know, that's it puts the power back into the hands. You don't feel so powerless. You don't, and I think the fact that you feel so powerless, you resent more because you don't have that choice. You don't have the
Yeah.
ability to make that choice. Whereas I think they get the opportunity to go and try stuff, and we never did. And I think also one thing, because everything was dictated for you, you never had to really make those decisions. So it sounds awful, and I still kind of feel this way, because my I think my faith is finding its balance at the minute. It's just finding its level as to where it wants to be.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell somebody when I'd been converted. I had no idea, because I'd been so brought up in the whole thing. I didn't know when my first interaction with Christ really was, because it just, I don't know. I've been having communion since I was a week old. So
Right.
I can't put, do you know what I mean? I didn't have to
Yeah.
actually do that work.
Mm-hmm. There's no, again,
And
there's
I
no
could see it for others
deliberateness.
around.
Yeah. There's no choice there.
No,
Yeah.
yeah. And you could see that for many others in there, that it's kind of an entitlement. It's like you've just been given it.
Yeah.
Which it just didn't feel authentic. And the hypocrisy, I think that's one reason why I haven't gone back to a faith at the minute. I feel like I'm just in this nominal believer situation, that I feel like I believe, I don't practice particularly. And I'm certainly not in a position to trust another congregation right now, because there's so much hypocrisy, so much damage done. As I said when I left, I can worship him wherever I want on my own, lying in bed looking at the ceiling. I don't have to be doing something specific, and I certainly don't have to be with a group of people. And I think because I've been so heavily let down by a group of people, or in my view, I would be quick to find that again in others. And I know no congregation's perfect. They're just a bunch of imperfect people trying to become perfect. I wouldn't want to join a perfect one anyway, because I would make it imperfect immediately. But it's just that potential to be let down, and I think I'm just not in the right place for it.
Yeah.
To trust.
Yeah. So you said, obviously the path was not easy, still is not easy. What are the ongoing challenges for you?
I think probably the first two for me leaving was establishing who you can and can't trust, and finding friends. I mean, obviously, I've left from a situation where I had probably 3 people I knew outside of it. and one was an osteopath, one was my dentist, a couple of counsellors who I'd got to know on a local level in the government, and there was a photographer because I was a photographer at the time. That was it. And none of those can you lean on. And you're needing support at that point in time. You know, they've got their own lives. They're not equipped to deal with somebody that's left a cult of which they know nothing about. So finding a support circle, finding people, you know, it's still very... I think it comes home to me more when I'm talking to people who say, oh yeah, I knew them from school. And you're like, well, that's nice for you. You know, I don't have friends that are 20, you know, I've known for 20 years that I can trust and I know their upbringings and their lives. I really don't. And as I've continued to develop myself over the last 3 years, many of the people I have got to know, I have decided not to surround myself with anymore, not to be in their company, because I've learned you're not healthy. You know, you're not what I need. So that was probably the first thing, because it's very lonely when you're on your own with no one else around. You've come from congregation that you saw daily.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it would be relationships. Having no experience, no training, no guidance. And I see that over and over again. I have now connected with a number of ex-members of the same cult, and over again, they're crashing and burning in their relationships.
Yeah. Well, relationships are hard straight up for anyone. But then when you didn't have any kind of healthy, balanced, you know, give and take relationships to base, you know, what a relationship is on. Right?
And it's so closed. It was so closed. It was like you would have a very small amount of verbal contact beforehand, decide that, yes, you were going to be with each other, probably get engaged maybe, I don't know, 4 months after you'd started to know each other, and then you'd be married, then you'd move in and the physical contact would start.
Wow.
And by the way, that was for life then.
Yeah.
And you just accepted it, you sucked it up and you did it. And it wasn't always a success. You know, you've got domestic abuse and lots of other things that go on.
Of course.
But it was so different to being able to try before you buy, and, you know, deciding what type of personality was right for you and whether you particularly liked their hobbies and where they lived. You didn't have any of those options.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's an arranged marriage. And arranged marriages are about property rights, and they're about family alliances. They're not about creating domestic harmony.
No, and they're not based on love.
No.
Which is a whole different relationship. Love and respect.
I love that you added respect.
That's just so key for me. So you can't, my view is you cannot love somebody without respecting them. You can respect somebody without loving them, but not the other way around.
Yes. Yeah. Respect is a prerequisite for love. And I think so many people do not understand that and go through most of their lives not understanding that. If I can share a personal anecdote here.
Go.
So I went through a period of my life where I was making just spectacularly poor choices in my relationships and prioritizing romantic relationships over my family relationships and friendship relationships and things like this. A lot of things that, you know, young people do. But I had one relationship that was incredibly important to me, which was the relationship with my adoptive sister. She was my best friend, and we trusted each other implicitly. And she was the person who, whenever I would, get broken, she would put me back together and support me through anything. Well, I put a romantic relationship above that relationship. And she said something to me at that time, which just cut me to the bone. And she said, "You understand love, but you don't understand respect. All of this time, I've been respecting you, but you haven't been respecting me. You love me, I believe that, but you don't respect me." And I argued with her And I said, no, you just you've misunderstood me or my intentions or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But she was absolutely right. She was absolutely right because I didn't even know what respect was. I wasn't expecting it from any of my relationships, and I wasn't
Mhm.
offering it either because I didn't know what it was or how to do it. And for 2 years, she didn't talk to me. 2 years. And during those 2 years, it was the best thing that could have happened because during those 2 years, I broke myself down and figured out, why is this happening? Why am I losing these people that actually matter to me? And built myself up from scratch and figured out what respect was. And so I came back to her 2 years later, very respectfully, apologized, offered to make amends, and she accepted. And now we're closer than ever. But I think so many people go
Powerful.
through their lives just never having been respected. And it
Mm-hmm.
definitely sounds like that's what happened to you, that you were in a situation where women just aren't respected, particularly.
Totally, totally. And I, I have to say, after when I started getting into these relationships, it was so painful. I mean, it was on top of having been bullied for years and trying to make a stand for myself and leaving, and then to find myself back in that position was like, I can't function. I am just not able to function. The pain is so high. And mercifully, I stumbled upon a workshop, did a couple of workshops around love, relationships, and one was called The Invitation of Love, the other one was called Balance of Power. Amazing, and I will never forget them, and they've been completely life-changing. And one of the things, they allowed me to see a lot of things in relationships, but
Mm-hmm.
one of the major things I saw was the pattern in which I was conducting my relationships. Firstly, how I was modeling what my parents had. And I
Mm-hmm.
do believe they loved each other and that, they were great together, but I was very much following in their footsteps and came to see I didn't want that. I didn't want that for myself. That wasn't the type
Yeah.
of person I wanted as a partner, was the person my father was. And then I also, came to see the pattern I was taking in them. So, this outwardly confident, bubbly personality, which attracted guys like flies to Honeybot because I was confident, which in itself is sexy, it's attractive. And then because I had really nobody outside of them, as soon as it kind of clicked and we were now in a relationship, I didn't want to let go of them. I wanted to do everything I could to keep them. And the low self-esteem that was underneath that bubbliness didn't take long to get impacted. And then I would just let them walk all over me so that I wouldn't lose them. And I just became this puppy dog that would
Mm-hmm.
just lie there and go, do whatever you want, because I don't want to lose you. I've got no one else outside of this.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of waking up and going, you know what? This really isn't serving me. This isn't what I want to keep doing. And there were very fast, there became two prerequisites for me in a relationship. One was I wanted an assertive person, not a weak personality, because being confident, I was attracting weak personalities. And
Yeah.
then as absolute power corrupts absolutely, so does absolute weakness. And in my absolute weakness, these weak personalities who weren't used to having power were becoming abusive with it.
Yep.
I was like, okay, I need an assertive person that's going to meet me in the middle. I'm going to stand up for myself as well. And we're going to have that respectful kind of tension as opposed to way over one way or way over the other. So it's in the middle there.
Yeah.
And I also wanted someone that, and I laugh, but I shouldn't laugh. Another prerequisite is that they had to have had a daughter. Because I tend to date up quite a lot. I date up by at least 20 years. I wanted them to have had a daughter. I wanted them to have understood the pain a woman can go through and how she needs protecting and caring for, because I had a lot of healing to do. And I
Yeah.
needed someone who was really strong in themselves and wasn't questioning their own life and what they should be doing, because I wasn't in a position to support that. I was doing all of that work myself in a major way. I could not support their journey at that point in time. I was desperately trying to heal so that I could become an even partner with them, and I just kept
Yeah.
picking up all these broken people.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of stuff I needed to look at there in a short space of time, thank goodness, because it wasn't, I've gone through at least 3 times when I have very seriously come close to committing suicide because it was just raw pain.
Yeah.
And you don't want suicide, you want the pain to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So those workshops sound amazing and like they really helped you recognize some important patterns. What self-work did you do after that to kind of create a basis for like self-respect and self-love? Because I know that that's, again, a prerequisite for being in a relationship with anyone else.
Yeah, a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I've done and continue to do is to be very protective of my energy.
Yeah.
I am a giver. I'm an empath too.
Mm-hmm.
And, takers turn up in flocks when they see
They
that.
sure do.
And you just have to know it's not bad to have boundaries. It's not bad to protect yourself. And I still feel like I walk away from a lot of people, and I'm sure I actually don't. I'm sure that I just walk away from a healthy amount of people that weren't supposed to be around, but it still
Right.
feels like a lot when you're an empath and you have been a people pleaser.
Yes. Yes.
And actually, you spoke about your sister earlier, and I've had I mean, as I said to you, my friendships are really new; they're still taking roots. But I had a friend who went through a lot of these went through at least one of the courses with me, and then stayed around. And we went through similar patterns in our relationships, and then she just disappeared this year, and that kind of hurt. I was like, wow, you just walked away and I would have supported you. And looking back, I'm like, thank fuck she did.
Mm-hmm.
Because my journey's gone on. I'm in a very stable and happy relationship now, happily engaged actually to a complete
Congratulations.
soulmate. Yeah,
Wonderful.
I'm so
Wonderful.
pleased, so lucky, so happy. Genuinely am. But hers hasn't. She's still stuck in the same place. And not only would
Yeah.
that pull the traction back, but I also believe me stepping out and not being that prop will make her face her own work, much like you did.
Absolutely. One of the things I have learned over and over is that if you are taking pain away from someone, you are taking power away from that person because pain can be powerful. Facing your pain
Yes. Yes.
is your greatest teacher. And so if you're buffering someone from that pain, you are taking away from them the opportunity to learn and grow and change.
Yes, yes, yes. And I've seen that with other friendships. I used to have a lot of male friends because I just didn't seem to, I don't know, I just didn't really seem to find growing up. My interests were similar to the women in there. Obviously, that's why I've left. So I guess
Yeah.
that's why I gravitated towards the men. And having left some of the male friendships I've developed, I'd be I'd be up till all hours taking calls from them when they were suicidal or they had problems or they were having constant cycles with exes. And I'm like, you come and you dump all this at my door and then you go back into it because you've had your pain relief.
Yeah.
You've had your
Yep.
pain relief and you're not sorting it, you're just dumping it. And in the meantime, I'm ruining some of my relationships because I'm spending all this time taking care of you.
Yeah.
The kindest thing I could do is to walk away from providing that painkiller so that you wake up and figure out you need to get your shit together.
100%. So everyone out there listening, you know when that's happening, right? You know when that's happening, when someone's using you as a pain relief balm. Stop doing that. Honestly, the kindest thing you can do for that person is just to stop being that for them. I promise. So let's switch gears here. We're at about the point where I usually do this. So I'm going to do a little exercise with you, if you don't mind. So you can close your eyes or open them, however you feel most comfortable. But I want you to, I'm going to wave my little magic wand here. Okay. I have just made all your wishes come true. Everything that you desire on a deep soul level has just come to pass. And so I just want you to look around your life as it is right now in this ideal space. See what you see, hear what you hear, smell what you smell, taste what you taste, and just describe for me what this perfect life is like.
It smells of country.
Mm.
Smells of space and fresh air. And peace,
Yeah.
tranquility. But there's a high vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's busy but relaxed, if that makes sense. There is plenty going on, but not overwhelming.
Yeah. What can you feel?
Earthy textures, so wood and stone.
Mm-hmm. Is the stone cool or warm?
Warm.
Mm.
And it's smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of light.
Do you hear anything?
Nature.
Mm-hmm.
There's birds, and there's obviously my chickens.
Obviously.
There's the sound of loving voices.
What's bringing you meaning in this space?
Can you rephrase that?
Absolutely. Is there something that you do in this ideal life that really brings you feeling of meaning and purpose?
I don't know that this really answers your question, but I feel like the most important thing is that I feel a sense of just being
Mm-hmm.
rather than having to be productive.
Yep. So I
So
want you
it's
to picture for a moment that there's someone here in this space that looks up to you. Now, that could be a child or it could be someone else, but this person really looks up to you and they see you just being and just being content. And I want you to see them kind of getting that and tell me what that feels like for you. Having that example of you just being.
just incredibly fulfilling. I just feel like it fills me up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't, I feel like I just kind of fill out, if you know what I mean, like you blow up a balloon, just fulfilling. I think that's the only way I can put it.
Yeah. Feel your energy just filling that space. Just filling that space with your content. And it's seeping into everything and everyone else in that space. Is there anything else you want to share about it?
I think does it add meaning? It improves the quality of my relationship even more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I want you to take a moment and see your partner in this space and just feel, like you said, that deepening of this relationship in this space of calm and peace and balance. So now I want you to think back. You're looking back into your memory from this space. What had to happen for this to be possible? Did anything need to change from what you're doing now so that this space, this life, could be?
My initial reaction is absolutely, but I can't tell you what. So I need to do some digging.
And that's fair. That's absolutely fair. So my, I guess, homework for you or suggestion is that you find something that can bring you back into this space. And sometimes it's an image, sometimes it's a sound or a piece of music. Sometimes it's a texture like that warm stone that you talked about. But find something that helps to put you into this space and just stay there for a little while every day, creating this feeling for yourself. And keep trying to look back and just see what the path was and anything, any routines that needed to be set, any commitments that needed to be made in order for this to be possible for you.
That really crystallizes the journey, the ladder, as it were.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is my gift to you.
Thank you. That's priceless. That's really priceless. That.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can just literally see the ladder, and I'm like, I just want to know what those rungs, what the labels are on those rungs.
Yeah. It'll come to you. It'll come
Mm,
to you.
mm.
And sometimes it's just being open to that energy and allowing yourself to shift a little bit over here, a little bit over there, seeing opportunities and going through doors. It doesn't have to be a specific path. It's just having that destination can really help your energy align to it.
I'm definitely going to be listening to this back.
Good. Good. So what I do is I have a little slideshow that I watch every morning. It's just 15 seconds long, but it's just a few images and a little song. And that just really puts me emotionally in that space of where I want to be. And it changes. I put in different images sometimes but it really helps set the tone for my day and to remind me that I don't actually physically have to be in that space to have those emotions. I can do that right now. I can start feeling those feelings immediately.
Very true, very true. And this I will know. A lot of this I know, and it's like it's actually having it and getting it and doing it.
Yeah. Yeah,
And you
there's
just,
knowing and then there's feeling.
yes, and acting on it. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like you just gave a window, like a portal. And I'm only quiet for once because I'm really thinking. Not because I'm not interested, I'm just really thinking.
Yeah. I love that. I'm going to leave this in. I'm not going to cut this down because I want people listening to have that breathing space too, to really think about this for themselves too. So take your time.
Mm. I'm definitely, I need to go back to that place you took me to and just walk through those steps,
Mm-hmm.
as in the questions you're asking, because I really want to know more. Like, I feel, obviously, because I've been doing a lot of healing, I feel like there's more I need to let go of
Yeah.
in order to reach where I want to reach. And yet I feel like I'm in some ways holding so tightly to things that aren't helping.
It's amazing how tightly we hold on to things that are holding us down. We just hold on to those stones that weigh us down, don't we?
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, I just want to know what it is I need to let go of, because then I wouldn't want to, I'd want to let go of them as quick as I could.
Yeah. A beautiful meditation that I was taken through recently by a guy, Daniel Bruce Levin. He's wonderful. You should look up his book, The Mosaic. But he did this wonderful meditation called the Trash Man meditation. And he has this character in his book of the trash man, and how, we overlook this man who is so important and takes away all these things that we don't want anymore, and that would be gumming up our space and causing problems if it was still here, right?
Yes.
And so it's this beautiful meditation of giving everything to the trash man. Just let him have it. And giving him things that we think we need, giving him everything we think we are, every story that we think defines us, everything. Just give it to the trash man and be in the void for a moment. Have nothing and realize, wait, I'm okay. I'm okay. I didn't need any of that stuff. And then ask the universe to fill you with what is really yours. What is yours and cannot be taken from you. And it's a very powerful experience. So that's another one that you can try.
We get in our own way so often.
That's all we do. We are our own worst enemy.
And I feel like I'm doing it right now at this time. I feel like I'm doing it in the biggest way possible. And it's doing my head in, if I'm honest. And I'm like, but I can't see around it. And it's just like, if I could only get out of my own way, I'd be able to see past myself. And it's
Absolutely.
just...
Yeah. Well, I'd love to work with you some more, but we're almost out of time here. So please tell the lovely people at home where they can find you.
Okay, so you are very welcome to either connect with me on Facebook under Jessie Shedden, or you can pop over to my website, which is jessieshedden.com, where you are more than welcome to download the first chapter of my book, Tomorrow's Not Promised, there for free.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been a real pleasure.